everyone. Welcome to VarsityWA's midweek podcast. I'm Todd Milles, your host. It is the first Wednesday of February, which means it is National Letter of Intent Day, and we'll bring on Lance McGee, VarsityWA's All-State Player of the Year from Sumner, the running back. He is going to sign with Washington State University. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his adventure the last 9 months from Davis of Yakima to the standout year with the Spartans. And then we'll bring on 247sports.com's national recruiting editor, Brandon Huffman, to not only talk about this 2026 class of recruits in Washington, but we'll peek ahead on what's in store for the next year. And then we'll have Shalls Jacome, the girls flag football coach from Lincoln of Tacoma, to talk about the inaugural upcoming WIAA playoffs and the growth of girls flag football in the state of Washington. Stick around. Welcome back to the first segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. I am Todd Milles, your host, and joining us, a special guest. It's Lance McGee, running back extraordinaire from Sumner. Let me recite these numbers to you again, Lance. I know you've probably got them to memory, but almost 2,500 yards rushing, 251 carries. I don't know how your body's doing, and 42 rushing touchdowns to lead Sumner to a state championship win over Lake Stevens. When you think of what's your season at Sumner, how much you going to remember this? How much are you going to remember and just sort of go that this is the best move I could have made for me?
Yeah, like I think it's greatness, but with that, like I wouldn't be here without none of my linemen, my coaches, my teammates. So like all the success I had this season, like was all to them, especially my line. Like everybody thinks I did all the running and everything like that, but without that line, like none of that would have been possible.
So the moment that you decided that you're going to uproot your whole life and move to the West Side, do you remember that day? Do you remember that conversation? And what was the key moment of a conversation that said, yep, I'm committed to doing this? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I had a couple conversations with a couple of the players here, like during a little bit before I came over here, and they were just like telling me how amazing it was going to be. Like they said my life would change, and I believed them, and like everything worked out for me. Like I talked to my parents too a little bit before we came, and like all of us, we were very nervous because we didn't know what was going to happen once I came over here. Like a lot of things could have went bad, but like everything went great, like better than I expected it to be for sure.
How much risk did you think was attached to this decision, Lance?
Quite a bit, but at the end of the day, like I really bet on myself. Like I knew I was gonna come here. I didn't know, like I had to fight for my spot. Like nothing was given to me when I got here. Like, so just betting on myself for real. Like I knew I was gonna come over here. I knew I was gonna improve myself. Like I was able to do it on that side of the mountains, just coming over here, and then like competition every week is better. So I knew I was gonna succeed over here.
Why do you think this worked out for you over here?
All the people I had around me. I would say it's different over here in Sumner. Like from the coaches to the players, everybody wants it as bad as everybody. So just being around these type of kids and type of coaches, it brings me up too as a player and as a person for sure.
I saw you at PLU, and you were at that point. You had been to a few campuses. I know you were not at your playing weight.
Yes, sir.
Lose that much weight and be the guy you were in the state championship game. Can you take us through how that happened?
Yeah.
You lost almost 30 pounds from the summer to the WIAA playoffs.
Yes, sir. Like I said, just the kids around here, the coaches. Like when I was about 235, I think, at the beginning of the season. Yeah, like before the first game. I was a little nervous where I was at with my playing weight and stuff, but my teammates and stuff, they'd encourage me every day. Like, Lance, you got it. Like, come on. And just hearing them, like having those type of teammates around me, and it just helped me so much to lose that weight, get on the field, and want to be great with them.
our producer, Lauren Smith here, added up your stats. I mean, there was probably 30, 35 running backs around the state that rushed for 1,000 yards in their whole season. You rushed for more than 1,000 yards in just the WIAA playoffs, and you also had a lot of carries.
Yes, sir.
How did your body, like, how sore were you after the WIAA playoffs were over?
Yeah, I was a little beat up. I'm not gonna lie. My adrenaline had worn off. Everything like, yeah, but it wasn't like I was in shape. Like losing all that weight from the beginning of the season and everything. Having a great line. I took a lot of hits, but it's like when I'm not getting touched, I rarely got tackled in the backfield. So it's yeah, just having them and everything. It's like my body's not too hurt. Like I'm fully healthy right now. So
Lots happened for you. And to sort of recap, when you came to Sumner, you were an Oregon State linebacker commit. Throughout the season, you had explored other options, thought maybe you were going back to Oregon State, and lo and behold, more from Prosser, which is what, 100 miles from you in Yakima,
yeah,
gets the head coaching job at Washington State University. Trent Bray joins him on that staff. And lo and behold, you became a Cougar signee. What's that been like for you, just that whirlwind of recruiting?
yeah. It was very stressful. There was a lot of long nights, a lot of long talks with my parents and family and everything. But just being home state and everything, like the connection I have with Coach Bray, like I've been saying, like all that stuff played a big role in it. Um, yeah, it's pretty simple, like, but it was very stressful. But coming down to it, the relationship I had with Coach Bray and just being an in-state kid and then seeing where the direction Wazoo's going right now, like I felt it was the best fit for me for sure.
And you are going in, and you're going to sign tomorrow as an athlete. Tomorrow being National Signing Day or National Letter of Intent Day, but they're going to give you they're going to give you an opportunity to play running back, which I know is something that you've talked about at the end of the season.
So,
Yeah, how much do you embrace that opportunity? Yeah, you might start out at linebacker, but there's an opportunity there for you to maybe move to the offensive side of the ball, which is sort of what you did at Sumner this year.
yes, sir. Whatever helps me get on the field quicker and help me contribute to the team and help us win games is wherever I'm fine at. So whatever they got a plan for me, I know I'm gonna succeed.
What's signing day going to be like for you? You're going to wake up. There's going to be that piece of paper in front of you. You got to put your signature to it and fax it off, and lo and behold, you got a new home officially. What's that going to be like for you?
It's gonna be crazy. It's like just thinking about it. Like once I sign that paper, like it's just real now. Like I'm a college athlete. Like it's just crazy. I feel like everything's gonna change from that moment. Just a whole new world I'm coming into. So I'm very excited for it.
Your last few months before you go off to Wazoo, kind of give us a kind of a detailed plan. What from February until going to Pullman in the summer? What's in store for you? Both training, sports, academics, exotic trips, things like that for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing like a little bit of training with linebacker and running back, so both. I'm doing track this season, so we're gonna see about that. I'm going to Hawaii with my friends for a senior trip, and then that's really it. But just I'm focused on like not focusing on one position too much, but keeping my variety open, like with running back and linebacker. So doing drills for both and everything like that.
Maybe the happiest man in high school football in the state of Washington, Lance McGee, VarsityWA State Player of the Year, collected the awards. Again, a lot of credit goes to that offensive line, as he said. Congratulations on all the great things that have happened to you. Best of luck. Thanks for joining the podcast. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Welcome back to the second segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. Todd Milles, your host here, bringing on one of my good friends. We had him on the podcast sometime in December. I think it was early signing period. You know, I don't want to call him 24/7's national recruiting editor. I want to call him the guy because sorry, Greg Biggins. Sorry, everybody else. Sorry, God. This is the guy, man. He's my guy. Brandon Huffman, who lives down in Arizona, gets to see a lot of good football. Was at the Polynesian Bowl recently. And I want to start off, Brandon, by asking you. Tomorrow is the regular National Signing Day. What's signing day in February? What is a typical signing day in February like for you from dawn to dusk?
Yeah, I mean it's much different than it was 5 years ago. The first early signing period was in the 2018 class, and then that December when they did the first early signing period in December 2017, I think there were about 60% of the class signed in December. The remaining signed in February. Now you're at about 98 to 2. Most players have already enrolled. I think there's one 4-star out west who will announce his decision tomorrow. That's Anthony Jones out of Creighton Lutheran in Irvine, who was originally committed to UCLA. Looked like he was going to be ended up at UCLA. Actually, kind of did the David Schwartz where he recommitted to UCLA right before signing day, then ultimately didn't sign with them. Other than that, I mean, it is full bore into the 27 class, into the 28 class, because the calendar has changed so much. And, junior days, you're tracking junior days from the weekend. You're in a dead period in the month of February. So it's much different. There's no, excitement at 4 a.m, waking up for that 7 o'clock hour to start on the East Coast. There's no two fists in Starbucks at 4:05 in the morning. It's almost like a business as usual day. And there's a part of me that waxes poetic about those old days. For you and I that were writing the Super Prep magazine, in the 2000s. For those of you that don't know what a magazine is, it's this paper thing that used to open up and read about all these guys. And in this code that we had to write, now just even talking about 26s we're 34 days into the year 2026. And it's like, the class of 2026 has been done with in my mind since December. So it's definitely changed for the diehard fans in terms of the celebration that signing day used to be. But for us older guys, us old heads, we still reminisce and wax poetic about the old days.
Oh, no question, man. There always used to be some suspense in the February signing day. I know a lot of that's been taken out of the air has been taken out of the balloon for early signing period. But let's talk about this 2026 class. And I know we talked about it a little bit the early signing period in December. Let's kind of review what the composite rankings on 24/7 for the class of 2026 in Washington. The top spot has not changed. Darren Coleman Barusa from Kennedy Catholic going to Washington remains number one, but a little movement. The Ramzak friend from Bethel has moved up to 2. Also a Husky signee, Henry Cabalas from Archbishop Murphy at 3. Arizona, his teammate, Jack Sievers, going to Wisconsin at 4. And David Schwartzel, who had a really interesting month of December from O'Day at 5, also going to the Huskies. But I want to ask you about sort of the class, Brandon. In general, there's a lot of depth, a lot of guys. You can even go down to the 30s and 35s, guys that are going 1AA. I mean, what kind of stands out about this class to you, both at the top and then with the depth of it?
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is a class that Derek Coleman-Brusa has been the number one player since 2 summers ago, but he was not the initial number one player in this state in the 2026 class. That actually was Cody Green, who spent his first 2 years at Eastside Catholic and then left after he won a state championship in basketball to go to Mater Dei. But Derek Coleman-Brusa has been the consensus number one defensive player in this class. And, Derek he committed so early on. It almost seemed like even though he didn't commit right away, once his brother Logan committed to the Huskies, it was like a foregone conclusion he was going to follow him. He had offers from all over the country. But then you have, 2 guys there in Ramzak Fruyan and David Schwartzel who were both headed to UCLA. And now they're going to Washington. And a class that, and at the time when Cody Green left to go to Southern California, he was committed to Oregon. So if you're a Washington Husky fan, you got to love the fact that Cody Green is a 5-star, would have been the number one player in this class. You got Derek Coleman-Brusa, who's a Husky signee. You got Ramzak Fruyan and David Schwartzel both staying home playing for Washington. So if you're a Washington fan, you're seeing what, Steve Sarkisian always talked about building the fence, and he really was not good at that outside of the Casey Williams, Austin Safarian Jenkins class. Chris Peterson did a better job. Kalen DeBoer didn't really emphasize it. Jimmy Lake was a disaster when it came to in-state recruiting, but Jed Fish has really done a good job, and you're seeing those local kids stay home, but you're also seeing, I think, the respect level for the conference in that you've got Jack Sievers, who's headed to Wisconsin, who's headed to the traditional Big Ten, and they had been recruiting him for a long time. You've got in what I would consider, maybe the biggest steal in this class, Arizona really honed in on Henry Gabalis, and I think they were his first Power Four offer, if I remember right. Oregon State thought that they had a great shot at him, and Arizona comes in with the offer and gets him, and the guy just ascended up the charts in this class. You have a player like Elijah Dewar, who is kind of down that list, but he was I think the Gatorade Player of the Year this year. Was a you could say that obviously we know my guy Keith Terry has done a phenomenal job at Mount Tahoma, but Elijah Durr has been there those last 4 years and helped him get that first playoff win when he was a sophomore, helped him get to the state championship game as a senior. And I think it speaks to the depth of the state when you've got Colorado, who doesn't really recruit high schools. They're coming into the state to recruit. You're seeing, Iowa State with obviously under different circumstances, but Iowa State dipping into the state with Jimmy Rogers leaving Wazoo to go there. And so I think what's most impressive about this class, you got a 1A kid who's going to the University of Washington. So you're seeing some depth. You're seeing 1A and 2A kids signing with Power 4 schools. I mean, when was the last time? You got to go back to Walker Williams back in, or maybe, I guess a couple years ago, the year we had Keith Olson, who, and at the time, the kid that, he was like a horse trainer who ended up going to Oregon State from another one of those small towns down in southern.
Yeah, Tenino.
Tenino, there you go. That was when Oregon State was still in the traditional Pac-12. But it's been a long time since you've seen 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A all sending players to the Power Four. And I think that speaks where there had been a couple of dark years there in the state in terms of talent. And I think 26 showed that it's on the rebound. And 27 and 28, with some elite national guys, is showing that it's going to get back to that late 2010 to the teens and the early 2020s.
Yeah, we talked about a guy, was the consensus other than the Gatorade Player of the Year. I think if you'd polled it after the state championships, I don't know if Lance McGee wouldn't have been everybody's state player of the year. Just to recap, was at Davis of Yakima, transferred to Sumner, led the state in rushing, broke a bunch of records in the postseason. I mean, Lauren added it up. He was 1,000-yard rusher in 4 WIAA state playoff games. What a year. And we talked about his outlook as possibly a running back in college. And since then, he's had one of the more adventurous recruiting paths. And I was curious to kind of hear you recap it and what you thought about him sort of ending up at Wazoo after being committed and recommitted to Oregon State.
I mean, Lance is an adventurous kid. I mean, he is hilarious. He and I had a great relationship going back to his freshman year when he got his first offer at the very first Avery Showcase at UPS from Nevada. And, made the move from Yakima, missed his sophomore year, made the move after his junior year to Sumner. And, I'd seen him during the spring circuit, the 7-on-7 circuit, and he put on a little bit of weight, and it wasn't good weight. And he was looking like a linebacker. In fact, most of the schools recruiting him were recruiting him as a linebacker. And I remember being at University of Washington at the end of June, and it was his first event with Sumner. And they were playing in Sumner High School was playing in the UW 7-on-7 tournament. And he comes running off the field, and he's like sucking wind. And he's like, man, I have got to get in shape. And Keith Ross, who's never met a defensive player he didn't love, but loves a power running back, was like, hey, he's got to get into shape. But, there's something there. The transformation physically that Lance made from when he made the move in June to what he did that last half of the season changed the entire direction of his collegiate career, because the running back position has been devalued in college and in the NFL to an extent. So is linebacker. But if you could be a every down back and a very productive back, you're going to find your college career is going to be very good and potentially after that. And so by shedding, I think like 24 pounds from the late summer or late spring to the time the season ended, you saw what if you would have seen what he looked like at the end of June when he was standing inside Husky Stadium, to what you guys saw in the state championship game, what he did in Husky Stadium, you would have thought it was a completely different person, and it was. And committed to Oregon State, thought he was done there. They have a coaching change. Washington State, kind of pushed for him under Jimmy Rogers. Boise State loved him, wanted him as a linebacker, but then the coaching change happens, and Kirby Moore, taps into his Tri-City roots, and you get a guy like Lance, who's originally from Yakima. And I think that if Washington State had prioritized him before, when Rogers was there, he may have ended up at Wazoo all along. But he ends up there, is going to be a Coug. And I think that is there's a couple of things about that. First, that's a big victory for Kirby Moore because he is a hell of a player. He's a Power 4 talent for sure, and you're getting the Pac-12. But more importantly, it's an in-state type of win that Washington State needs to beat the Oregon States, needs to beat the San Diego States. Washington State's biggest threat in the state of Washington is not going to be Oregon State. It's going to be Boise State, which is camped out in the Northwest for the last couple of years. I mean, the head coach at Washington State spurned Washington State to go to Boise State. So you've got, Matt Miller, who's his offensive coordinator, also went to Boise State. Washington State needs to win those battles, and I think Lance McGee is going to be a guy that can kind of be that first big face of Kirby Moore's efforts in recruiting, both in the state and just in the Pac-12 in general.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby Moore was barely off the plane.
Yeah.
When he got that big recruiting win. Lance McGee, like I said, the consensus end of year state player of the year. Let's talk a little bit. Let's kind of wrap this up and kind of peek into 2027 class and how you guys kind of have it right now, Brandon. The composite rankings for 2027. Again, this is obviously subject to change throughout the summer. Braylon Pope, the wide receiver at Sumner, who's committed to UW as your number one. Tavita Nonu, who had a monster postseason, coming back for O'Day, number two. And the talented quarterback at Lincoln, Sione Kaho, at number three. All three of those guys, 4 stars. And Jacoba Doyle, also a 4-star, the offensive tackle at Puyallup at number 4. When you look at the top end of this 2027 class, Brandon, what sticks out with you? And then what can emerge here in those, five on down? What do you see with the depth of this class potentially?
I'll tell you what, this is at the very top. And really, if you look at the top 10, I mean, this is as good of a line group on both sides of the ball as we've seen, quite some time. I mean, you got to go back to that era when you had Josh Connolly, who's a first-round draft pick, Vega Ioane, who is likely going to be a first-round draft pick, Dave Ulee, who started at Oregon this year on a playoff semifinalist, Mark Naboo, who started at center on a playoff team as well. You got 2 really good offensive linemen in Jacoba Doyle, who's a 4-star on the composite, maybe the best pure lineman in the state right now. And then you've also got Rashawn Lavatai out of Curtis down there in University Place. Another really good player who's seen his recruitment pick up, but it's the defensive line where you've got the talent. I mean, Tavita Nonu is 24/7's number 1 player, and he's number 2 in the composite. And then you got Ty Tatolo, who, could be a pretty good offensive tackle if that's what he wanted to play. Edge rusher made that move to Lake Stevens this offseason. Both those guys are coveted by everybody. And yet, it's a receiver. I mean, you got to go back to, I think, when you had G. Scott and Emeka Egbuka to have a receiver of this caliber in the rankings like you do with Braylon Pope. And part of the reason we don't talk about Braylon Pope so much is because of Lance McGee. And, Keith Ross likes to win by running the ball and with defense. And so Braylon Pope maybe has not gotten the targets that you would expect an elite receiver, but we've seen him at enough events where the talent is there. You've got a guy like Josiah Mitchell down at Puyallup High School who's been fantastic to the start of this season. You've got Case Betts, who's been ridiculously productive at Graham Kapowson. You've got Seth Price, who's another key part at receiver. You got Zach Albright, who's a tight end, who's a very freakish athletic tight end up there at Glacier Peak for our guy Shane Keck. And then, we don't talk about him enough, but he's a 4-star quarterback who earned a start, the first ever junior to start in the Polynesian Bowl at quarterback, Sione Kaho, who, what Sione has done the last few years at Lincoln, he'll be a 4-year starter there, a very rare 4-year starter there, and a school that, he replaced Jabari Johnson, who went to the SEC, is now ended up transferring to Oregon State. But, Sione, in an era where you see quarterbacks in California play at 3 or 4 different high schools and 3 or 4 years, Sione stayed loyal at Lincoln, and his recruitment is going to be very fascinating because Washington has made him a very, very big, clear priority. But Cal, Tosh Lupoi was, people forget, his older brother, Ale Kaho, signed with Washington in 2018, never enrolled, ended up at Alabama because he had a couple of things with his classes, ended up at Alabama to go play for then defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi. Well, Tosh is the first one who offers Sione when he was at Oregon, even though at the time, Tosh was the defensive coordinator. He was recruiting Sione because of that relationship. Sione was at Cal this weekend for their junior day. Tosh Lupoi, Nick Rolovich making him a huge priority. So Washington's kind of got that home field advantage, but Sione is very seriously looking at Cal. And so, you got a big time quarterback in Sione Kaho, but also keep an eye on Ryan Harrington up there at Anacortes, who he's got a couple of Power 4 offers. He's the number 1 target for Washington State. So, I can't remember the last time, Todd, where both the in-state schools could end up with an in-state quarterback in the same recruiting class. It's been a while. You're starting to see again, and maybe it's because Jimmy Rogers is kind of a stranger to the region, and Jake Dickert wasn't really from the Northwest. You're really seeing Jed Fish's emphasis on the state of Washington, but a Washington native and Kirby Moore. It won't surprise if you start seeing that list to the right where you see those logos be a lot of W's and a lot of Cougars.
Yeah, it's always a lot more enjoyable when you have a 4 or 5 star quarterback in your class. It's always fun to sort of track that. And obviously this 2027 class has 2 really good junior quarterbacks in Sione Kaho, Ryan Harrington, both very, very productive in high school. Brandon Huffman, always an honor to have you on. You are a wealth of knowledge. It's just like turning on the faucet, and man, you don't even have to log on the website, man. You can just hear him talk for 20 minutes, and you have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen here over the next year or so. Thanks, man. It's always good seeing you. Have fun tomorrow. We'll get caught up soon.
Appreciate it, Todd. Take care.
Welcome back to the 3rd segment of the VarsityWA Midweek Podcast. It's a football kind of week. We've talked some recruiting. We talked to Lance McGee about his amazing year at Sumner and some of his recruiting going to Wazoo. And now we're going to jump to the winter version of football, the girls' flag football season entering its first year of sanctioned play. Regional round of the state playoffs this week, and we're joined by Shalls Jacome, the flag coach at Lincoln of Tacoma, one of the founding programs, won the first state championship in 2023 when there were about 30 schools, 30 club programs that were playing. And a lot of those girls from that program, Shalls, are seniors on your program now. You guys are the number 1 seed in the official 3A tournament. I'm curious, as somebody that's seen this in year 1 and now we're in year 4, just the growth of the sport, even through the club season and the first year of sanctioned football. What are some of the things that hit you about it?
Yeah, I think the growth and participation is probably one of the biggest things. Obviously, becoming a sanctioned sport now, there's a roster limit on how many we can carry. But even dating back to last year, right? Like programs like ourselves, Stadium, Mount Si, like we're about 80 girls deep, and so I think the growth of the sport is just exponential, especially over the last couple of years. Once it kind of gained popularity, and now that it's an official sport, I think we're going to see even more so of a turnout. And just recently with the NCAA approving flag as an emerging sport, right? I think it's going to provide opportunities for our girls to be able to play at the next level, which again is going to exponentially raise the opportunities and the participation in it. So it's just been really cool to see it grow from year 1. I think when we first started, we had 6 girls out, and we didn't even have enough for a team. It was during COVID 2020, right? To see that, and then to see our program now, I believe this year we were like 82 deep. It's just exponential, and so it's been really cool to see the growth, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. after the first couple of years, especially now being a sanctioned sport.
Yeah, you had an interesting comment after your district championship game victory over White River on Saturday. You talked about how some of the founding programs, the programs that had been around for 3 or 4 years, Stadium, yourselves, Lincoln of Seattle, some teams down here, Elma Ridge, Mount Si, the gap between what you guys have done and experienced and some of these first year programs is rapidly closing. Like teams in their first year can enjoy immediate success. And I was curious, I wanted you to kind of expand on that answer on why and what are some of the reasons behind that?
Yeah. It just goes back to a lot of I mean, White River is a great example. First year program, they hire a good coach and he does a good job of recruiting the hallways and getting girls out for different sports. If you're able to do that, I think you're able to be successful right away in year one, right? Flag football, it's different than boys tackle football, but in many ways it's very similar. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that there's a lot of teams with like assistants in it who coach in the fall, and they just simply jump into the winter and they run some of the same systems as the boys do. And so I think continuity and coaches who kind of understand the sport, and in girls who are beginning to really develop a high football IQ in terms of being able to play and understand coverages. And I mean, it's just pretty amazing what's happening here for like a lot of programs in year one. Right. And so props to White River and a lot of other programs that are doing it the right way, especially from the beginning. But the gap is definitely closing. At first, obviously, it was like the founding programs kind of knew the rules a little better, and they knew the pace of the game and what works, what doesn't, what's the field is a little smaller, so it's a little harder to create spacing. But now you see all kinds of things out there, and props for it. It's good for the sport, right? It's not good for it to just be kind of centered on a couple teams. And so, yeah, really excited about like all these other programs. Not excited about the gap closing, but excited that there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of good teams and good coaches as well.
The one thing you hear about this sport, Shalls, is the fun aspect. It's just, so much fun to play, so much fun to watch. I'm sure it's so much fun to coach. In terms of the ceiling of popularity, like long-term, like how popular, how participation-wise, where do you see this sport going? Could it be the next big thing in Washington? Could it join some of the elite sports in terms of participation? Are we talking that kind of ceiling?
Yeah, so I really do believe so. It provides access to a sport where, I mean, girls could always play football, right? But there was always a limit in access, and I think flag football gives girls that access to football that they've wanted for years and years. And so, I mean, I think 2 weeks ago we saw the first Power 5 offer in California to a student athlete, right? So like the doors are opening. I mean, or rather, they have flung open already. And so, somewhere I read that like the participation in flag football has grown by like 150% over the last couple of years or 2 years or something crazy, And so what's unfortunate is that it is, wherever you put flag football, it's going to compete with other sports. And so that's kind of the unfortunate part. But I think there's ways to kind of have it where it doesn't kind of cannibalize other sports. But because it's growing. I mean, already our season isn't over yet. And there's girls coming out talking about, how they want to play next year. And in Tacoma, we had girls flag football in the middle schools this year, And so, I mean, it's growing, and I don't think it's a super expensive sport to kind of get started either. So I think it's a benefit to kind of have it as well. It's not super expensive. The maintenance costs aren't high, and it provides access for a lot of girls to do a lot of cool things.
Yeah, and I think we're up to 20 states now that sanction girls flag football as an official sport, and that number is growing rapidly. You are like we mentioned before, you're one of the founding programs in Washington. You've had a really cool experience for your team. Last spring, you went to China and got to do a tour and play some flag football in the country, and you're going back this spring. Explain a little bit about that trip and how cool of an experience it is for your student athletes.
Yeah, we were blessed with the opportunity to attend a student exchange in China through the CPAC and also through the NFL China, kind of working together with us. They brought us in, and we were able to kind of tour 3 cities. We had exchanges out there with different schools, and we played a couple games. The girls went 4-0, 5-0 in China, which is a big accomplishment for them. And so it was really good time. I know it's part of their initiative to bring to bring more students into China to kind of experience the culture, experience of the things that they have to offer. And so in that meeting, we were at a dinner with the Minister of Sports, and I think it went really well last year because they invited us back at that dinner. And so this year we'll be traveling with 10 boys and then 10 boys and 10 girls. So we're adding another 10 to that trip, and we're going to be attending the 55th anniversary of the ping pong diplomacy between China and the U.S. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's quite a trip.
Yeah,
maybe another 4-0 trip or 5-0 trip.
Hope so.
The mighty
Yeah.
A's.
The girls call themselves the 2025 international champs, is what they call themselves.
Well, they have an opportunity to add another state championship this weekend. But one I want to ask you is, a lot of assistant coaches from the fall tackle football season have crossed over into the winter girls flag football season. What does that provide for you tackle football coaches, and how do we get more female coaches involved? I know that there are a fair amount, but obviously, we want to see, some representation too. So where do you see that trend going?
Yeah. So I think for a lot of sports, I mean, I can only speak from our experience, right? When we first started, they just needed coaches. And obviously the first place to turn was, football coaches, right? Like flag football is close to football. And so that's how we got involved. And I think that's, without knowing, but I think that's very similar to a lot of other situations. First year programs are looking for coaches. Sometimes it can be hard to find. So they turn to assistants in football. And for us, like as assistant coaches, the benefit, I mean, we brought on a couple of new coaches this year, and I mean, it's so refreshing. It's the best way to put it, to be able to coach flag football. The stresses of boys football, and don't get me wrong, not that flag football isn't stressful in its own way, but it's just so different to coach girls and boys. It's a different way of teaching, right? They're different learners, and so it's just been really cool to kind of experience that. And to answer your question about representation, it's something that we here at Lincoln we're very aware of, and so we bring on coaches, especially female coaches who want to coach with us, and we kind of show them the ropes. And our JV assistant last year, she was our female defensive coordinator. She did a great job for us. I think just providing those opportunities for them to come in and kind of learn the game little by little, especially if they don't know the game. But I think there are plenty of coaches out there that do know the game, that are female coaches that just maybe need the opportunity. We just have to be willing to give them that same opportunity that we got,
Well, if you haven't gotten out to watch the Abes, the number one seeds in the 3A tournament, they do start their regional round of the WIAA playoffs Saturday at Lincoln Bowl, a noon and 2 p.m. start times, as the Abes try and advance to the Final Four, which will take place in VarsityWA Memorial Stadium a week from now, next weekend. Shalls Jacome, thanks for joining the podcast and giving us a little bit of insight on the growth of one of the real true emerging sports in Washington, girls flag football, as we enter the inaugural year and the first official postseason. Best of luck to the Abes moving forward.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time.
This podcast is brought to you by Varsity Washington, your source for high school sports news, rankings, and more around the state of Washington. You can listen to new episodes of the VarsityWA Podcast weekly on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And for more from VarsityWA, visit us at varsitywanews.com and subscribe for daily posts covering the high school sports landscape around the state. A special thank you to our guests on this episode and to Carl Johnson and Matt Bueller of the Portland-based band Edith and Axon for providing the music you hear at the beginning and end of this podcast each week. You can find the band on Instagram at Edith Axon Official. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the VarsityWA Podcast. For producer Lauren Smith, I'm your host, Todd Milles. We will be back next week.